So I'm pretty sure you guys can figure out how to get your side cover off. So to get your flywheel off, I like to use a brass drift, and if you get crafty with how you hold it, sharp little whack and it should pop right off of there. Little side note, I usually try and make, where's the keyway there? Before I do that, I try and make sure that I don't have the magnet wind up with the coil. Makes pulling it off a little easier. Of course, I found these after I started this, but I usually use these little knockers, I guess you'd call them. Just buy the appropriately sized and threaded nut for your crankshaft, weld it on the end of a piece of solid round. They thread right onto the crankshaft. You can use those the same way. Nice sharp little whack. Usually break the flywheel loose. They're a little better option. Keep the threads from getting messed up. Keep you from mushrooming out the end of the crankshaft. But brass drift works fine too. So the preferred method and more or less correct way to set this up for how much you're going to advance it is to use a degree wheel and timing light and set it exact. But another way that will get you by with minimal effort is to steal one of these tapes from your lovely wife and measure the circumference of the flywheel. And on these little guys, they come out right at about 11 inches. So divide 360 degrees by 11 inches, and you come up with 32 degrees per inch, which ends up being 8 degrees per quarter inch, which is about perfect on these from what I've found. So when you pull the flywheel off looking from the back side, you're going to want to grind or remove material from the left side of the cast-in keyway here, and about 20 thousandths, or roughly a quarter or a third of the key will usually get you close enough anyways. So once you get your material removed from the left side of the keyway there, place the flywheel back on the crankshaft, and you'll now find that you have a range of movement, counterclockwise and clockwise, with the crankshaft in place. So if you rotate the flywheel clockwise up against the keyway, it effectively sets the timing at stock, or where it was stock. So I make my mark on the flywheel and the saw body. So with that mark made, I now rotate the flywheel counterclockwise without engaging the crankshaft. Notice the flywheel moving, but the crankshaft is still in its original place. Move the flywheel counterclockwise till it stops. Now make another mark where that flywheel lines up. So that's stock timing. This is with the keyway ground where it will be advanced to. So if you measure marks where the stock timing was to where it will be advanced to, you're looking at roughly quarter of an inch, give or take. I found these saws don't seem to be too picky as long as you're somewhere near that range. Again, you'll notice the flywheel is indexed. I'm not anywhere near the magnet. Makes adjustment nice and easy. Magnet's not trying to pull against the coil, making life difficult. So anyways, if you have to get out of range for some reason, or happen to get out of range I should say, just rotate the flywheel and crankshaft clockwise, I should say, clockwise, till you're at your original timing mark for stock. In advance should be where your advanced mark is. Notice, once again, the crankshaft is not moving. So, when I get ready, I'll line up my stock timing mark. And I will make a mark on the end of the crankshaft and on the flywheel in a location that I can see when the nut is installed. That'll give me a rough idea when it's advanced or if it's lined up. So when it's time to set it, take my nut, thread it down by hand all the way tight, back it off just a touch, take my flywheel and rotate it and the crankshaft counterclockwise, then back clockwise to the stock timing position. That way I know it's set. And I rotate the flywheel counterclockwise to the advanced timing position. Notice crankshaft does not move. So once I have that lined up and everything's happy, hold on to the flywheel and give it a quick zip with my impact driver. And I set it to proper torque spec after this. But if you look, it's hard to tell on camera, maybe, but that mark is not lined up with the mark on the end of the crankshaft. So I know it's still advanced. If it was lined up with that mark, then I would know that the flywheel spun and it was back to the original timing position. So I've come to the conclusion that 8 degrees advance or 1/4 inch on the outside diameter of the flywheel is about perfect on these from reading various posts on different forums, and in turn checking it with a degree wheel and a timing light on my own personal saws. And I've done a handful of them this way now, and never seems to be any problems, and they seem to run great. There are videos out there on doing it. If you guys would like to see short video on checking timing with a timing light, I'd be happy to do a video on it if there's interest. With the timing advance out of the way, we can now move on to the muffler. This muffler's already been done, so you'll just have to take my word that they're pretty choked down from the factory. Like I said, this one's already been opened up, but when you pull yours apart, you'll find one single small hole behind that spark arrestor, and the whole rest of this area will be blocked off. So I open them up to the same dimensions as the outer opening out here, because after you factor in cross-sectional area that's blocked off by your spark screen, it's really not as open as you might think, but definitely increased flow. Also, with that being said, no matter how wide that opening is in the actual muffler, your outlet is effectively, after it goes through this, only as open as the outer deflector is. So that's the total size of the opening or outlet that your exhaust is exiting through, regardless of how big that hole is. So you'll find when you pull the deflector off of your stock muffler, the opening in the back here will be much more narrow. I take a small Dremel and elongate and widen that opening on the back till it just gets to the edge of the outer deflector. That way the exhaust gases are still directed by the deflector and don't come straight out the side and melt the plastics. Depending on your tuning, these can be pretty notorious for plugging up with carbon. So I'll usually take a torch, give it a quick shot, burn all the carbon out of them. Maybe even get them a quick scrub with a wire brush, or just blow them out with an air compressor. Easy as that. They'll be nice and clean. Then all that's left, a little reassembly, and you're good to go. With the muffler reinstalled and the flywheel set, all you have to do is reinstall the side covers and go to tuning your saw. So after your muffler's opened up, got your timing advanced, you're gonna have to readjust your carburetor so that it's properly tuned. Pull the outer cover off, air filter cover off, and the air filter. A couple nuts come off. This inner partition comes out. And you're into your carburetor. Once your carburetor is pulled off, you'll notice there are plastic limiting stops on the jets, and I'll try and find a few pictures to include with this on how to trim those, but there's just tabs on the outside of those plastic limiting caps that are around the jets, and all you have to do is take a razor blade, if you have a hot razor blade, even better, and slice the limiting tabs off, and then you'll have full range of motion on adjustment for the high and low jets.